Julius. I'm with Darren. Just a short interview, just asking him just topics on just men, just questions that we tend to have, I don't know, on a day-to-day basis, life in itself, but we don't really ask them. So yeah, we're just going to spend time with Darren, just asking him a few questions. First question, Darren. What do you think serves or acts as a huge obstacle in men's identity today in terms of relationship with God?
Well, I think one of the things that's definitely a huge obstacle is, I think, just the projection of what a male is supposed to be, just in society as general. This idea that a man is supposed to be, ultra macho, ultra confident, have all of the answers. And that is almost the opposite of what it means to really have a relationship with God. And for us to understand that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Whereas in Christ we understand that we do have vulnerabilities, and that's okay, and that doesn't have to be hidden. And that's something that we're not necessarily used to as men, just putting that out there like that. And so sometimes I think that as men we can find that very hard when it comes to having a relationship with God. I think there's also the issue of the concept of a father. In many areas of society today, the role model of just having a father, that's become something that's become less and less of a feature for a lot of young men growing up. And so sometimes they have no reference point for speaking about God as a father, and they don't know what that looks like. And often if that whole concept of a father is something that you've almost blocked out of your life because one hasn't been there, then sometimes trying to relate to God as a father, even initially, just to say the word father, it can open up a lot of old wounds, a lot of old hurts, a lot of places that as men we don't really want to go. And so if we don't learn to relate to God as Father, then we really miss out on understanding His heart for us, His love for us. And I've seen that time and time again as being quite a big obstacle and a big barrier for men to get over. I'd say those are two of the main things that men tend to struggle with that I've found.
Thank you, Darren, for that. Yeah, no, I totally understand, and I can relate to that as well. Second question, men and sex. Yep. It's something that obviously in church we kind of hover around it. It's like the big elephant in the room again. We know we have a problem in regards to these sort of two topics in itself and concepts in itself, but nobody wants to really talk about it, if that makes sense. So the question is just basically, why is it that as men we tend to struggle a lot with sex and our sexual desires?
I mean, I think, again, a lot of it comes from the fact that, first of all, obviously the desires are natural and they're very, very strong impulses. And before we become a Christian, before we accept Jesus Christ into our life, we have a way of dealing often with our sexuality. And as men, when it comes to the sexual relationship between men and women, men are what we call the projectors, if you like. Men are the ones, to put it another way, we're the ones that are carrying the seed, we're the ones that are making the advance in that way. So in terms of just how we deal with our sexuality, we're used to dealing with it in a way where it's something that we project out there. It's sort of how we want it to be, how we approach women. We're very much the drivers in that. And really the reference point is whatever we think is acceptable. We approach women according to what we think is acceptable. We do what we think is acceptable. and more or less we expect women to respond to that, which means that whatever we do is okay. You even see that in society at large, that if you look at even female fashions and the way a lot of females dress, you trace that back and it all comes from men's desires and men's perceptions and what men want, and whatever we want kind of controls how sexuality and sexual relations are played out, and that can be seen throughout history. And so having that mindset and working with that mindset, and then suddenly you realize when you come to Christ that that's actually not the way we were designed to function. But the problem is we've been doing it for so long. And we've been used to reacting to our desires in a certain way for so long, that to now suddenly just change that is not necessarily that easy. It's not just a physical thing. It involves our emotions. It involves our will and the way that we think. We are wired up naturally to do whatever it is that gives us pleasure. Whatever feels good, that's what we do. And so naturally, with these desires that we have as men, our mind's reaction is to want to do what feels good. And that is, I think, sometimes where the struggle comes, in learning self-control, in learning restraint, and the reasons why. Because I think another reason why we struggle is because we don't often know the reasons why. Why is it that we should change the way that we behave? Why is it that we should change the way that we act? How do we change the way that we perceive things when we once looked at things this way, but now we're told that we need to look at things from another point of view? I think as men, it's really important that we understand the reasons why, and I think that's where there's a very big gap in our understanding. And you can only really make a change once you understand something.
What is the ideal image of a man in Christ? Because we've been told so much what we shouldn't do, so we already know what we're not supposed to portray in a way, and but we're never really, how can I put it, really given that sort of, not necessarily just an example, but that whole sort of thing in our day-to-day life in church. Just what is then the ideal image of a man in Christ, like characteristics, attitude, mentality?
Well, interestingly, when I was looking at this, one of the things that the Bible has to say to men a lot, and it repeats it again and again and again, is self-control. As men, I think one of the greatest characteristics that we can have is restraint and self-control. God has created us as men with a strength. He's created us with an ability to shape, an ability to mold, to forge things, to use our strength to manipulate things, to dominate things. And he's called us to very much to lead in that as men. So it's a great power that he's given us. And that power is really best expressed when we learn self-control. And I think it's one of the things that makes us stand out compared to the way that perhaps things are outside of Christ and in the world, and the way that men are told they are to be generally, is that, first of all, we're men of self-control. We're men of self-control over our own bodies, in our sexuality. We're men of self-control in our emotions. We're men of self-control just in all areas of our life. So I think that is one of the big things that has to mark a Christian man, that should be part of our character. Integrity is another one. Just being men of our word, being able to be trusted, being honest with ourselves, honest with others, honest in our relationships. If we are in a relationship with a female, we don't tell lies, big lies, little lies. We are just integral in what we do. And again, being willing to take risks seems an odd one, but it's one that I like to talk about quite a bit. I think that as men, God has designed us as risk takers. I don't think that's anything that's ever supposed to be suppressed. We have a Father that loves us. We have a Father that we can be secure in, totally secure in, and that is a great launching pad for us to be able to take risks, to explore, to do things, with that strength that He's given us, and to take chances. So I think that should be part of our character, and loyalty. That we are there. We're there for our families. We're there for our kids. We're not absent from the home. We're there for our brothers and sisters. Just that loyalty, that dependability. I think those, if I had to put just maybe a couple of things, I think those are the things that are really hallmarks of Christian man. And lastly, it would be just the ability to embrace the fact that his strength comes from God. So he doesn't always have to have all the answers. He doesn't always have to have it together. So that as strong as he can be, he can still cry before God. He can still be vulnerable before God. He can still be open. I don't think that as men we're truly free until we can be both strong and vulnerable. Until we can be, confident, but also secure in our weakness.